from the Needle in London. How you getting on, Geoff?
Pretty good so far, yes.
Good. And you're here with Dave, and do you both do a lot of conventions?
Yeah, we usually travel together. I mean, I sometimes I'll try to take a couple more artists if we get, if we've got time and space for a bigger booth.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're usually the partners in crime.
Cool. And what do you think of the Liverpool Tattoo Convention?
So far, so good. We were here last year for the first one.
Yeah.
And apparently it's growing, so it's a good thing.
Yeah. Seems very well organised, actually.
Yeah. Very surprised last year at how well it went for a first shot.
Yeah.
He's got it under control, I think.
And do you do many conventions? How many would you do per year?
We're doing fewer now. At least I am. I'd probably say maybe around 10 at this point.
Yeah.
And it's hard because there's more and more conventions coming up, and it's not that I don't enjoy them, but I'm really busy at the shop.
Yeah.
So I think I'm better off actually staying at the shop and taking care of my regular customers.
Right.
Because this
just a customer service tip, essentially.
It is. I mean, and you never guaranteed the work. I mean, for me, it's more of a networking thing and a social thing. Every now and then you do tend to get, a new customer who will get tattooed by you at whatever convention and eventually follow you into the shop.
Yeah. So
for that, in that sense, it's really good. But on the most part, I'm cutting back because I think my time is better spent at the shop.
Right. Okay. And what was your first tattoo yourself that you got?
On my 18th birthday, I got a Marilyn Monroe portrait.
Marilyn Monroe,
yeah.
Do you still have it? Was it covered up there?
My first 3 are covered up, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
But it was just one of those things, very romantic period in New York with tattooing because it was illegal, so it's not like you had a huge choice of people to go to.
Right.
It was just going from not being tattooed to being tattooed, and that kind of held me over for a while.
And was it the tattoo that inspired you? Was it getting the tattoo that inspired you to be a tattooer yourself, or was it? Did you want to be a tattooer before you got a tattoo?
No, not at all. I mean, I was fascinated with tattoos since I was a little kid, and I've been an artist since I was a little kid. I'm a sort of natural-born illustrator.
Yeah. So, did you travel through the other kind of facets of art before you arrived at tattooing?
Yeah, well, I studied graphic design, and I did that for a couple of years. And by that point, I was getting more work done. It just somehow didn't seem to me as something that I would end up doing. Yeah. It wasn't that I wanted to or didn't want to. It just always seemed like that's something somebody else does. Like those guys do that. It was a matter of being in the right place at the right time, and I was offered an apprenticeship.
Nice. You haven't looked back?
So I haven't looked back at all. It's 15, 16 years now, and no regrets whatsoever.
And how's your apprenticeship experience? I mean, apprenticeships, especially I've spent the last 10 years, have obviously changed quite significantly.
Yeah. No, mine was, I feel a bit guilty when I talk about it because I know there's a lot of people who try really hard to get their foot in the door and who go around begging for an opportunity. With me, I just ended up helping this guy out as he was opening his shop, and I wasn't employed at the moment, so I was kind of in this limbo looking for the next thing to come along, and the studio just got ridiculously busy, and they couldn't handle all the work. Yeah. And I had sort of stuck around while he was building the shop, and after he opened, and he asked me just to hang around and help out with phones and talking to people, and I was helping out with drawings, and so it was almost a very natural sort of, I fell into it very naturally. It wasn't, and even while I was doing that, I didn't expect to end up tattooing until he asked me to do it if I wanted to. And I think based on that alone is why I still work at it so hard. Yeah. Because I feel like I had it easy in a way. Not that I didn't work for it, but it just I've never wanted to take it for granted, basically.
Right. Good.
So
and what was the first tattoo you did on somebody else?
Yeah, luckily, as you're apprenticing, your friends find out that you're apprenticing, and they hand themselves over to you practically because they know you're being supervised. And I had quite a few opportunities. But my first one, I think, was actually a pretty cool Batman.
Well, Batman is cool.
Batman is very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, for a first tattoo to do. And the first few tattoos I did were probably a bit more difficult than you'd expect a first timer to be doing.
Yeah.
But I somehow found those easier to do than when people came in with the smaller traditional imagery.
Yeah.
Because I think technically you need to be much more on point with that stuff.
Right, yeah.
If you're doing bigger, sort of more artsy stuff, you're allowed a little bit more leeway as far as your technique.
Yeah, so I suppose it's when it's kind of set in stone, as it were, it's kind of hemmed in by those parameters.
Yeah. And all you've got is lines, shading, color. It's got to be clean.
And how would you describe your? I mean, a lot of tattooers obviously go through various styles to find their own. How would you describe your style now?
I don't think I've found it yet. But coming from an illustration background, what I've tried to do, and also the guys that I learned to tattoo from, they were all artists before they started tattooing. And that is my school. That's the school that I come from. Is I learned with a bunch of guys who weren't copying anything in terms of the traditional tattoo imagery or tattoo styles. And that's kind of how I follow through. I basically like to take on everything, but it won't be by the book. It won't be traditional.
So you will add your own flavors.
I'll add my own, I mean, and I personally, I think just as an artist, you always try to push yourself harder. But I've had more and more people tell me that they've seen a tattoo by me and they knew it was from me. Yeah. So I guess that's a
great thing to
particular
have.
style.
Yeah, if people can recognize your work.
And that's it. I think there's plenty of people in the industry now that are doing almost perfect, call it Japanese or whatever. But it's hard to differentiate between the artist as far as who did it because it's too traditional. So for me, it's the opportunity that people come up and they ask me for stuff, yet they're willing to let me give them my version of it.
And that's the ethos you would have in the studio, even from the...
Yeah, I try to hire people that have something different to offer. You know, always, regardless of what it is. You know, I'd like for the work to come out of that studio to be different to whatever else is being done on a larger scale. Just and it's for me, even when I see a tattoo coming from my shop, it's gratifying because I know that it's different, slightly different to anything else you're going to find out.
So I mean, it's almost like a brand in a lot of ways. It's like being able to spot.
Exactly. I think that because tattooing has gotten so popular, a lot of the younger generation or people coming into it now, it's almost like they're set into a certain criteria as far as style. You know, it's like you see the same tattoos being repeated, even though it's really well done. But there is a lot of the same kind of thing going around it, and that's my point. That is what I try to break up a bit if I can. If I'm able
I mean, you talk about illustration there, and it's definitely of late. You know, that seems to be coming back into. There's a lot more kind of new styles, maybe a bit more illustrative. Seems to be emerging just slightly.
Yeah, or a lot more. It's. I think we finally hit a point that it is gone. There's always been this talk about people being tattooists or tattoo artists.
Or tattooers.
Or tattooers. I've always believed that a tattoo artist is someone that has something of their own to offer the industry, as opposed to just take from it, or borrow from it, or copy from it. You know, taking the shop over for Bugs is a perfect example. I mean, you have a lot of people that love his stuff, a lot of people that don't. But to me, he was probably the first to really come out with something that just sort of shattered, you know, the mold. And that style came from him, his artistic side, from his paintings, from his painter side, and that is what I think is happening now.